What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Well Man's Podcast. My name is Bryan Brozy. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Dr. Keoni Tita. Keoni, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How's everybody out there? I just found out, I think, is today the rollout for the COVID vaccine?
I know it's sometime this week. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first person is getting it today. So we want to talk a little bit about the vaccine and basically let all of you know what Bryan and I have as far as our basic understanding of it. I think it will help quell some anxiety that people have around vaccines.
Yeah. And we've covered vaccines before. So if you listen to that one, we are a proponent of vaccines as a whole.
Definitely
wouldn't. Super timely.
I wouldn't categorize us as anti-vaxxers, but there are some exceptions to that. And we don't take the decision lightly of whether people take the vaccine or not. But with this vaccine, this is new technology. We're talking about an mRNA vaccine, and what that actually means is that we are taking genetic material from the virus, the COVID virus, and we are taking a little snippet of that. And specifically the area that we're taking a snippet of is we're getting the DNA sequence of the spike protein and then making we're getting the sequence from the spike protein and then from that making the mRNA little sequence. So it's not the full spike protein, but it's enough of the spike protein that our immune system should be able to recognize it. So
this is not the live virus like we know with some vaccines.
Nope, it's not the live virus, and because of that, it is impossible to catch coronavirus from this vaccine. So that can't happen. That's absolutely impossible.
And that was one of the things I, saw on Twitter or something like that, of course.
Yeah.
So that's good to know.
Yeah. So that can't happen. But anyway, so you take this material from the virus, and it's just a little snippet of RNA.
Mm-hmm.
It's packaged into an mRNA type of molecule, and you get vaccinated with it. It gets taken up by your cells, and your cells start making what this little code of RNA is in the cytoplasm, starts making this protein, and it's part of this spike protein that you see on the virus, the coronavirus. And then this spike, that mRNA, gets together with other cellular machinery and starts pumping out this spike protein. And that spike protein is then put out there into the extracellular space, and it stimulates your body to see it as foreign. And so therefore your body can make antibodies from it. Okay.
So a spike protein is more or less like a bat signal.
Right. So the spike protein is how the virus attaches to your cell.
Okay.
And once that virus attaches to a receptor, specifically it's the ACE2 receptor on cells, which are high in the lung area. That's where people really get a problem in the lungs. And then it releases its genetic material. This virus will release genetic material into the cells, infect the cells, and make viral particles, and then spit those viral particles out. And then those viral particles go on to infect all the other cells in your body. So what we're doing with this vaccine is we found that the actual genetic sequence of the actual spike protein that's found on this virus. We're taking a small snippet of that sequence, and now we're making an mRNA sequence of genetic material, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the vaccine. That's the main ingredient in the vaccine. You put that, then you inject that into the person, your cells take it up, and for a short time, your cells will start reading that code in the cytoplasm of the cell, not the nucleus. So it doesn't go into your DNA. It just stays into the cytoplasm. And what happens is then your cellular machinery will make these little snippets of spike protein and put them out there to stimulate your immune system to recognize it. Once your immune system recognizes that little snippet of spike protein, when you get infected with the real virus, now you already have antibodies to that little snippet of spike protein. It will recognize, oh, this looks similar. Your body's basically saying, oh, this virus, the coronavirus, looks similar to this foreign thing, this little spike protein,
Right.
and therefore we're going to mount an appropriate response, and you won't get sick.
Right. Right. We're kind of made
I mean,
aware of the
that's
enemy's
the gist
plan.
of it.
Yeah, and now we can halt the
Right.
enemy's plan because we're
Right.
aware
Yeah.
of it.
You make the body aware of the enemy's plan. And once you have an idea of the plan, you get, when the
better
real
thwart it.
thing happens, you can, yes.
Yeah.
But let me just explain real quick, because I think just a basic understanding of how, I don't know, how genetic codes work, and how you remember transcription and translation, right? From
So
your
of course I
biology
remember
days.
hearing these things. I might need you to break it down.
I remember hearing them too. And I'm going to give a real basic cursory understanding of how this works. But basically, for your body, in the human body, to make protein, it has to read DNA. I don't want to confuse people, because this virus is an RNA virus. It has nothing to do with DNA, but I want you to get I want to explain this to you so people will understand how this mRNA vaccine kind of works.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Yeah.
So to make protein in your body, you have DNA in your nucleus of all your cells. And in a particular cell, that DNA has to unwind, and you get something called another protein called RNA polymerase that attaches and reads that DNA. And what it does is it makes mRNA. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now this mRNA gets sent into the cytoplasm of your cell outside the nucleus, right? And now and the reason it does that is because that's where the mRNA can be translated into protein. Once it's translated into protein, your cell will use this protein to make make your body work, make the cellular machinery work throughout your body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the questions that I've had about this, does this mRNA vaccine actually go into the nucleus of your cell? No,
Right.
It stays in the cytoplasm.
Right.
It's a much safer space than going into the nucleus of your cell.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And this is, and the reason why we have it there is because that mRNA, that's where the mRNA does its magic. It makes its protein there. And so when we get the vaccine, that mRNA vaccine takes that little snippet of mRNA in the vaccine and makes the protein, which is part of the spike protein on the virus, and then puts it out into the body. And now your body looks at it and goes, oh, this is foreign. Let's build antibodies to it. It gets rid of all that stuff. But now you have memory cells or T cells that will remember that snippet of sequence. And when it sees something similar to that again, it's going to mount a response.
Right.
Without creating, without you having to be really, really sick when you're actually exposed.
Right.
Basically, the best case scenario is you become like an asymptomatic carrier of COVID. You just don't get the symptoms if you get this vaccine.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But you do not run the risk of passing it on to others, because it's not the live vaccine like we discussed, or it's not. It's not a live.
Right. You're not gonna get sick, and you're not gonna pass on any viral particles or anything like that onto other people. So that's why that's why people have to get vaccinated, and the reason why there's a big push in the world is to reach herd immunity. Means that 70 to 90% of the population either has to be vaccinated or infected with the virus, right?
Okay.
So if we infected 70 to 90% of the population with the live virus, think about how many deaths we already have. I think we're going to top 300,000 deaths from infections in the United States alone. And that's a very small percentage of the population in the United States. But to get 70 to 90% of the population infected with herd immunity, you're talking about numbers. You're talking about huge amounts of deaths. And that's why when you hear stuff on the media like, we should just wait for herd immunity. Herd immunity, to get natural herd immunity, is a long, long way away, and it will create a lot of death and destruction in the process of getting there.
Yeah, long way.
And it already has. So it's not a viable strategy. It's not a viable strategy, at least for this virus. It's not a viable strategy.
Yeah. Okay.
So
it's something you hear tossed around quite a bit too. So I'm glad we got to clear that up.
Right. So I tried to explain off the cuff what this vaccine does, what the mechanism of action is. So let me read it out based on just taking a cut from the CDC website, from an expert, which we're obviously not,
right.
But we're just trying to get the good information out of it. So the mechanism of action of this vaccine, messenger RNA describes one of the spike proteins that stud the outer surface of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? The current virus that we're dealing with.
Yep.
So human cells don't make spike proteins, but they still can read viral messenger RNA, right? So that's what we're basically doing. We're reading a snippet of viral messenger RNA and follow its instructions to make the protein. When somebody receives a dose of the vaccine, their body responds by producing the spike protein, but only the spike protein and no other part of the virus. Okay, so therefore you can't get COVID or coronavirus from the vaccine. It's impossible.
And so when you get coronavirus, from out and about, however you would get it, you're still going to develop those spike proteins, but you're just going a step further, and you're getting much more changes that are kind of making you sick and getting this infection really underway. And this vaccine, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just stopping right at that spike protein part. It's just giving you the information you need to develop those spike proteins and that awareness to better deal with it in the future.
Right. Well, think about the spike protein as being the messenger to the immune system to create antibodies.
Okay.
All right. And therefore you have protection from when you do get the infection. You will be protected against it.
But we do have these spike proteins on the actual virus. Like when we look at the virus, they have.
Oh yeah, when you look at it, you see the virus. It looks like a round ball with all these little pointy things coming out of it.
And those are the spike proteins.
Those are the spike proteins. Yep. And we're making just a little portion of it so that our immune system can recognize the real coronavirus.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay.
And these spike proteins they're not normally, of course, found in human cells, but their presence triggers an immune response. So that's how the vaccine works.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Now the question will come, well, okay, so now I have this like viral mRNA, a little snippet of it in me based on the vaccination. What happens? I mean, do I keep making these proteins? No, you only have a short, that mRNA that you injected into the body will only be read for a short amount of time, and then your body degrades it down. Okay, but that's all your body needs, is to produce a little bit of those partial spike proteins, right? So that your immune system can respond, but it will get broken down. But then your body will in a really good vaccine will remember.
Okay, so this is my next question. So that memory, or that kind of genetic code, not the genetic code, but the memory of what to do when you encounter these spike proteins stays with you.
Right. So you basically you're basically artificially improving the person's immune system. So when they are exposed to the virus, they're able to hopefully fend it off without any symptoms.
Yeah. Now, as far as you know, Keoni, is like the flu vaccine, is that a live virus, or is that a similar way that this vaccine works?
No, this is a novel vaccine. So a lot of the flu vaccines work by a different mechanism, but this mechanism uses mRNA. So a lot of vaccines use like an attenuated viral particle, or a weakened virus to stimulate and help the immune system respond. This is new technology, and it's really a great technology as long as we get it right, and it looks like we have with this based on the studies. But the issue with it, and the reason why it's new, is because it was very hard to get this mRNA into the cells of the body. You have to package it in such a way that your cells will take it up, and then unpack it and then read it, right? So it's kind of wrapped around like a lipophilic molecule to get it into the cell.
Right.
And so we've seen, based on that and numerous studies, so people say, oh, this is mRNA is just a new vaccine, and the implication is that it hasn't been rigorously studied and tested. Well, it actually has. It's been studied a lot throughout the world, mostly in animals, and it was a lot of experimenting on what would work and get it into the body, and how the how the body will respond to all that. And so we know, and we've actually now have, human trials on this that show that the current vaccines are up to 90% effective. And that's unheard of. That's a really incredible number. Like when I first heard that on the news, 90 to 95% effective, I was like, that sounds like nonsense, because that's unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's based on this new technology, which is super exciting, because this mRNA technology is going to be able to help. I think it's going to be used to help fight cancer, and also now we can go back and fight other viruses more effectively with it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. It sounds much more specific. But so
Yeah.
just to clarify, the mRNA technology as an approach to vaccines has been around and well studied, and then the difference is obviously the newness of the situation with the
Right.
coronavirus.
It's well studied. I mean, there's a lot more study that needs to be done, no doubt. But it is well studied. But this vaccine is new on the block for humans and using it in mass production for humans. So it is new in that regard.
In the use of this mRNA way of passing on a vaccine is
Yes.
new within across the board. We
Yes.
don't. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's new. It's new. We don't
Okay.
have. We
Like the
haven't used
polio vaccine didn't work this way or
Nope.
anything like
Nope.
that. Gotcha. Okay.
No. This is new technology, and it's technology that seems to be much safer and cutting edge, and it can work for a number of things.
Yeah. Well, that's great to understand after we just went through everything, because the new technology part is super scary. But then when you break down how much more specific and kind of precise in what it's doing, it seems like a
Uh-huh.
much better way to get
And
vaccinated.
oh, no doubt, it's very specific. It's a much better way. I think based on what I'm reading, I think it's going to be a much safer way to get vaccinated. The other thing about it, Bryan, which is fascinating, is now that we kind of have this new technology, when the next virus comes, and it's going to come,
Right. Right.
we will have a vaccine rolled out. I think now it won't take years; it
Right.
will take months,
Right.
which will save thousands of lives. So I have high hopes for this vaccine. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's going to really be something that we all should be thrilled about.
Yeah, absolutely. But okay. All right. I wanted to really break that down because I know that gets super confusing and it's part of the what makes it so scary.
Right. Well, and it's a great question. I mean, the vaccines are, new on the block as far as using them for human intervention. And the reason why, like I said before, is, we've had tons of clinical trials using it on influenza, Zika, rabies, cytomegalovirus. And the challenges always came up with the instability of using free RNA in the body, and then unintended inflammatory outcomes and modest immune responses, and so within decades, we've perfected it and gotten past all those issues. But no, this was thought about even in the fight against HIV,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and it may still be used for that. But now
Mm-hmm.
the technology is becoming more and more perfected.
Yeah. Okay.
So what else? So if you can't actually get the virus from the vaccine. I mean, you can't get coronavirus from the vaccine.
Yeah, there's no virus in there.
There's
You're
no
just
there's no
getting some
viral
signals
yeah there's
about
no
it.
viral particle, so you can't get infected with it. But some of the based on the studies, the side effects are very similar, or maybe slightly worse than getting a regular influenza vaccine. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you may get some fatigue, chills, headache, myalgia. Of course, you can get pain at the injection site. There recently, I read there when they started rolling this out in the last few days, a couple people had a bad allergic reaction and
Mm-hmm.
were
That's
quickly
what I read.
stabilized from that. I do want to say, like, because one of the questions I have, or we'll probably get, is, and a lot of people who are very against vaccinations, and I can understand what they're getting at here is, well, what are the actual ingredients in the vaccine?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the ingredient list in this vaccine is really benign compared to some of the ingredient lists I've seen in other vaccines. And we already went over vaccines in one podcast, and we talked about adjuvants. You know, these are things that help stimulate the immune system. A lot of them have other ingredients in there, like, I don't know, like egg protein or thimerosal, mercury, things like that. And what we find is these things just help enhance the immune system. And yeah, thinking about getting mercury injected into you is like, you know,
Doesn't sound good.
yeah, it doesn't sound good, but you know, when we look at the science, that small amount of mercury does nothing to your body. All right. Now, I should say in most cases. Okay, in most cases, I don't want to. I mean, you know, I'm not. I don't want to say that it can't hurt some people, but you know, billions of people have been vaccinated, and the amounts there are that you're actually getting in a vaccine are very, very small. And basically what I'm saying is the advantages of those outweigh the disadvantages in most cases. But with that being said, let me just go over the ingredients of this vaccine. All right. So, well, the main ingredient we just talked about, you have the modified mRNA, right? And that encodes the viral spike protein found on the coronavirus. And then you have to package that. So you package it with lipids, okay? Part of that packaging in a lipid envelope, so to speak, you get like things like phospholipids, things that cholesterol molecules, and then you may also get like polyethylene glycol, okay? That's in everybody, if you read the list of a lot of like processed foods or vitamin supplements, the ones that I tend not to use, but like in Centrum, you'll see this compound in there. All right. So most people have been exposed to that. And then the rest of it is just salts like potassium chloride, potassium phosphate, sodium chloride, you know, sodium phosphate dihydrate. I mean, I know these are chemical sounding names, but you know, sodium chloride is table salt.
Right.
You know, so and potassium chloride your body has definitely been exposed to. And then the next ingredient is 6 milligrams of sucrose or sucrose. Sucrose is just table sugar. So this ingredient list that I'm at least seeing, or the one that I have in front of me, seems very benign compared to some of the ingredient lists of other vaccines.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to bring up, at least that I know of, that we know of, is that currently no one has died from taking this vaccine. Okay, now people will say, that's bullshit, Keoni, that people have died. Well, let me put it this way. Nobody has died from the vaccine, and we can't make a connection to the vaccine to the death, okay? Basically, with the Pfizer studies, we saw some people die, but it was the same percentage that you would expect of dying in the normal population, you know? So you can't make that connection.
Right.
That the vaccine did that. You would expect some deaths during the study of 47 or 46,000 participants. And
Yeah,
as long as it's in the guidelines with what you would expect from the normal population death rate, that'd be it. And those deaths, I think most of them, some, or at least two of them, or maybe half of them, correct? I may be wrong on this, but maybe half of them were from the control group, which didn't even get the vaccine.
Right.
All right. So that's so when I heard that out there, well, people have died from, no, not really. We don't have any evidence showing that. Here, actually, I'm reading right here. It said 6 people did die from the Pfizer vaccine trials, but only 2 of them were given the vaccine. The other 4 were a placebo solution of salt and water. No causal relationship was established between the vaccine and the 2 deaths, and they occurred in line with the normal death rate for the general population. So there you go.
Yeah.
So who should be careful about getting the vaccine? Well, if you ever had an allergic reaction to any of the ingredients in the vaccine, I would say don't get the vaccine.
Well, that's what Pfizer says. So Pfizer's got their contraindications for the vaccine, and it's specifically for people with a history of severe allergic reaction to any component of basically the vaccine, like you just mentioned.
Right.
And then they have warnings as well for who shouldn't be taking it. And these are all from FDA and Pfizer, and the immunocompromised persons. And particularly, that's it.
Well, you're one of the things that I think is good, and that any physician that's administering the vaccine should ask: do you have any allergies? If so, what are
Mm-hmm.
they? You
Mm-hmm.
know, have you ever had a bad reaction to a vaccination?
Mm-hmm.
Was it linked to the vaccination, or do you know? Are you getting this vaccination and you have a fever right now? That may not be a good idea. Do you
Right.
have a bleeding disorder, or are you on a blood thinner? That may not be such a good idea. Probably shouldn't get vaccinated, I would think. I certainly wouldn't want to be administering a vaccination to a woman that's pregnant or planning on becoming pregnant soon, at
Right.
least not soon after. So those are things. Um, Let your doctor know if you're actually breastfeeding. That may play a role
Yep.
there. And then, have you actually received another COVID vaccine? That would be another thing that people should. Those things they should tell their doctor. And I think just letting your doctors know your medical history is really huge. So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
that those are the things that I think are really going to help people stay safe with the vaccine. Because what would really be awful, Brian, is if we do this, if we if this vaccine rolls out, and let's say people aren't upfront about what's going on with them and get the vaccine anyway, and it causes 1 or 2 deaths, then guess what's probably going to happen? Most people are not
Yeah.
going to get the vaccine.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
what does that mean? Then we're on our way to, on this long death march to herd immunity, where a large percent of the population, more so than what's happened already, are going to really, really suffer. And that's not mentioning, whether you recover, a lot of people who recover have ongoing medical issues after getting the coronavirus.
Mm.
So,
So, Keoni, if you were presented to take the vaccine this week, you had the option to take it. Would you be taking it this week
yeah,
as it rolls out?
I would take it. I would take it. And the reason why I would, Brian, I would probably, if I had the option, I'd probably, if I could get to the front of the line, I'd probably take it, because I do not want to. I have a number of reasons for this. I do not want to be the cause of anybody's death. I don't want to pass this virus on. All right. The other thing is, and I know this is kind of like, this goes more with my worldview. If I took this vaccine and I died from taking that vaccine, I would be able to live with it, in a sense. that I would hope science could learn from it. All right. So that's where I go with it. I feel like the advantages outweigh the disadvantages of this. I feel like this is a very safe vaccine. Um, and I just feel like, based on my experience with some of my friends who have died from this virus, if I can do whatever I can to help progress,
Yeah.
then yeah, I would take the vaccine. I certainly don't have a fear of the vaccine. I have more of a fear, based on what I've seen, of catching the virus than getting the vaccine. So there's your answer. I mean, I would take the
That's
vaccine.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
interesting.
that may change. What if it rolls out and then we start seeing all these long, negative side effects from it? Yeah, then of course I'm going to change my mind. But based on the science that we know right now, and that's what our decision should be made on, is what we know right now. Yeah, I would take the vaccine.
That's fair. I mean, and so as from your opinion, and again, neither of us are vaccine experts and or statisticians,
Right.
but I know and then it's careful to kind of break apart which vaccine we're talking about, because from what I'm understanding from what we've discussed, MRI vaccines studied up and down. I mean, we've got an idea of
mRNA
mRNA, or
vaccines.
I'm
Yep.
sorry, yeah, mRNA. mRNA vaccines studied up and down. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this one of the reasons I asked you that, like we were talking about before the podcast, is working in a skilled nursing facility. It's obviously coming to us first and foremost, like the people that are working in that facility. So
Yep.
I got the option of taking it, or if I wanted to get the possibility of taking it, I don't think I would give it to me because I'm in the low risk category. But I looked at, 44,000 people or 40,000 people have participated in the Pfizer test, and that was more or less the most concerning part to me.
Yeah.
Nothing else about the vaccine, just the simple fact of
Not that many people
more people have listened to the podcast than have gotten
taking the
dosed with this
vaccine.
vaccine. And that's, yeah.
Well, at least with the Pfizer vaccine, but to think about all the, there's the Moderna vaccine, there's clinical trials being done all over the world. So a
And so
lot,
are all these vaccines for coronavirus, the Moderna, all of them, they're all operating under that mRNA way of attack.
yes.
Okay.
So yes, most of the ones out there are using the mRNA technology now. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. At
And
least
it was
the
interesting to me
big
because I was
ones.
talking to my friends just kind of about my situation, what I felt with all the information I had at the time trying to make that decision. And just how, at what point would you typically feel comfortable taking a vaccine, Keoni? I think some of your answers based off what you just said, kind of about, you know, you're thinking a lot more globally than I am, where I'm a lot more individually focused. I can just tell based off the way I'm answering the questions.
Yep.
Whereas, and so that may answer that already, but what does it, coronavirus aside, for vaccines, kind of that initial phase, what gives you the confidence in a new one, if that makes sense? Or what would it
It's just
be that would make you feel confident in taking a new one like this one?
basically what we talked about, the ingredient list based on
Okay.
understanding how it works.
Right.
And then also looking at the science and seeing that it's 90 to 95% effective. What does that mean? When we say 90 to 95% effective, it means that 95% of the people that took that vaccine developed antibodies to it and did not get reinfected with coronavirus. Some of a small percentage got the vaccine and still got coronavirus, but 95% got it, created antibodies, and guess what that means? That means that basically you can't pass it on to other people. You
Right.
can't be a carrier. Now, in
Right.
your situation, right, with your age, my age plays a role. Like I'm a decade, I'm a generation older than you. So I just look at it that I'm more at risk than you also
Well, yeah,
in a sense.
it was
In a sense,
interesting that you said based off, you're more concerned about, the negative aspects of not getting the vaccine and more concerned about getting the virus than you are of any negative consequence of getting the vaccine.
yeah.
And I feel right now, my health, my situation, and knowing I've come in contact with it, right? I get contact tracing emails at work and whatnot.
Yep.
And so I
Yeah.
know I've been in contact with it and stuff like that. And I test every week and I've never tested positive. And
Yep.
at that point, it's like all those little factors for me start to add up where, and I could easily be incorrect in saying this, that I'm less afraid of the disease right now. For me, obviously, I'm more afraid about passing it on to someone else. But for me, than I am of what the consequence could be from taking
Yep.
this vaccine. But it sounds to me, now that I've been educated more on the mRNA way that this goes about, that it's pretty much as safe as you could get for a vaccine.
It certainly seems that way, and it's pretty much really effective. But I will say this: so, um, the vaccine is no substitute. I mean, what I mean is, you still should be wearing masks if you get the vaccine. You should be washing your hands. You still should be doing all the hygiene practices we talked about
Mm-hmm.
in a number of these
Mm-hmm.
podcasts, especially on the mask wearing one. It doesn't mean that, okay, once you get the vaccine, you don't, protect yourself in other ways.
Right.
Besides those preventive measures will protect you against other viral infections also. Um, so I tell people that if you take those preventive measures, you significantly lower your risk for catching it and then also passing it on.
Right.
So, and I understand people who want to wait and see, if they, let's wait and see how people are doing, like as far as getting the vaccines. And it's starting today. It's rolling out. People like me and you probably won't. Well, actually, I'd say the general public probably are not going to be vaccinated until April, maybe. It'll probably be in April where there's just mass vaccinations for. Right now, it's going to be healthcare workers and
Mm-hmm.
in high risk communities and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And that's why it was so interesting to me, I have to make that decision this week. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's quick.
Yep. Um, the other thing is there is some health disparity issues going on with how the vaccine is rolled out and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And with this vaccine, it seems like you have to get 2 shots. You get
It's 2 doses.
yeah, you get the initial shot, and then like 3 to 4 weeks later, you get the booster shot. Um, and the issue with that is okay. Let's say you get the first shot, and you just have your arm is real sore, or you just get a bad reaction. Let's say you get a fever and you're in bed for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to stop a lot of people from going and getting the second shot.
Mm. That's a great point. And
And
I'm not educated enough to know what would happen,
well,
what falls
basically,
apart there.
so what falls apart there is you may not build immunity,
Right. Of
right?
course. Yeah.
So you just get partial protection that may fade away, within weeks, and then you can be prone to getting the virus, or then again pass it on.
Yeah,
So
which is
this is
another
this
reason
is
why it's so important to maintain those health measures.
right. So if you're gonna if you're
And
gonna if you're gonna get it, you really need to follow through on getting the second one, the booster, also.
yeah,
Unless you just had this horrible like reaction that you can't do it. I mean,
yeah,
where you had a really bad, severe reaction to it.
yeah.
That's not to say one shot won't give you, I think the studies show that it can give you like 30 to 50% protection, but we just don't know how long it lasts.
Yeah,
Probably
there's a
doesn't
reason
last that
there's
long.
2 shots.
Yeah, there's
yeah.
there's a reason there's 2 shots. And we don't know how those 2 shots will last. And also, we also have to keep in mind it may be like the flu virus where, the
There's different.
coronavirus can mutate,
Right.
right? So
Which we do
this may
know
be
there
a
are
seasonal
multiple
thing.
strains.
There are.
So do we know, like for this Pfizer vaccine, and I can only speak on the Pfizer one just because that's the one, I was offered and did the most research.
Right.
So for something like that, Keoni, this mRNA, will that, because we know there are multiple strands, does that cover all my strands, or do we not know that yet? Or
I don't know the answer to that. I would think yes. I would think they
okay,
picked a segment of the spike protein to code
okay,
that kind of fits all of them.
gotcha.
All right.
Yeah,
Or gets close to fitting all of them.
yeah. I see what you mean.
So I would think you would have some protection. And I would think if it, mutates in other ways, that we'd have to just wait and see. But I think, the scientists are going to pick something that, can be recognized.
Right. So quick recap, just kind of close it all in together. Overall, it seems very safe. This mRNA technology is a new way of distributing vaccines, but it's been highly researched throughout the last few decades. It's just obviously we're using it for a novel virus, which means that the vaccine's got to be very specific.
Yep.
And it being mRNA has to be very specific.
Yep. And we're just recently doing human trials on it, right? We've done human trials on it, but now this is like the first mass vaccination with mRNA vaccine.
Okay.
All right. So,
anything else, Keoni?
Let me see. Well, we talked about another drawback with the vaccine. You probably heard this, that they have to be cold, right? So this the vaccine,
they're refrigerated.
Yeah. So that can cause some of the rollout problems with, if they're not refrigerated well enough. Yeah, logistically, people may not be able to get them as fast as we thought, or maybe people got, this is where mistakes can happen. Maybe people got the vaccine, but it wasn't refrigerated appropriately, and it did nothing for them because there was not, the mRNA within the vaccine degraded, right?
Right.
And then you'd get something like, well, somebody got the vaccine and still got coronavirus and, had a really bad time with it and yada, yada, yada. It could be due to not making sure that the vaccine is appropriately prepared and stuff and rolled out appropriately. What else?
I like to say at this point, it's obviously your decision. At this point, I feel like it's no longer a
right.
We had our previous vaccine talk, and I think we talked a lot about kind of like the vaccinations children get in those early on ages. And at this point, those have been studied in there's so much time and research that's gone into those that we know they're overall very safe and highly effective.
Yeah.
And we can say without a doubt that would probably, we recommend that as healthcare
Well, I
providers.
mean, look, I mean, I just tell people, like, really, if you want to talk about how effective vaccines have been in our lives, think about what smallpox, we completely eradicated it. Think about what we did with polio. There's studies on the influenza vaccine from preventing deaths. I mean, it's just the vaccines have done so much good for the human population overall. I mean, it's part of the reason why, me and you may be here, because somebody down the way got vaccinated to smallpox or something, or either be natural,
Yeah,
were
100%.
exposed to, some sort of vaccination, or was exposed to it in such a way that the virus is weakened or whatever. So it saves lives. So
It
that's
absolutely
the nice
does.
thing. That's the nice thing about this technology. But there's a lot of unknown, because we don't know, like, what's going to happen years down the road if you had this vaccine. We just don't know yet.
Right, right.
And we've talked about in a number of podcasts, this is my thought on science. I mean, every age is their own experiment,
Yeah.
you know? So, and you have to use the data you have in front of you to make an informed decision. Or
Yes.
if you don't do that, you are more likely to run into a ton of problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we ran into this with the whole masking issue. This is where we are, right? It's like half the people screaming masks don't work and won't wear them. And look what we found. I mean, you can say what you want to, but the data says without a doubt, you don't wear a mask and you don't do the proper social distancing, the virus will spread by wildfire. You can look at the data, you can look at graphs that show the peak and the troughs, and then a huge peak. I mean, there's no doubt that those things work. So we really have to, like, the information has to be put out there so people can understand it in a way where it doesn't frighten them. And I'm hoping that this podcast can do that, or
Yeah.
overall, or the
Exactly.
podcast we put out there can do that for people, to just help them with their angst around it.
Yeah, make an informed self decision. Be your own patient advocate. Be informed.
And that's the other thing you're kind of hitting on there. A lot of people go, well, I don't think vaccines should be mandated. Well, in reality, vaccines aren't mandated. Most vaccines are not mandated unless in very small population groups. Like sometimes in the hospital, yeah, you can make a case that vaccines are mandated in hospitals there. But you're talking about very small populations. There are no statewide mandates for vaccines. There's no national mandate to get vaccines. So it's, but
So
for
you
me,
just make an informed decision for you.
make an informed decision for you. And, but
Consider
really
others.
make an informed decision, but don't think you're the expert. Like, go to the experts to make
100%.
the informed, go to the experts to make sure and Bryan and I are not the
Yeah,
experts
which
on
is
this.
not
We're
the
just,
Wellman's podcast. It's just information.
it's just information that we're giving out there based on our understanding of it. And we're trying to be, balanced with it. I'm trying to be balanced with it, but it just seems like the experts are the infectious disease experts, the researchers out there that are doing that. And, read what you can. I think it's good to read on the internet everything you can, but if you're going to read something about all the negative side effects of vaccines, definitely you have to do the same for reading all the positive effects of what vaccines have done.
Yeah, and definitely use, it takes some effort to be able to read knowledgeably about this stuff.
Right.
That's what I told you before we hopped on here it was about 4 or 5 days ago when I got the option that, hey, we're going to have the vaccine possibly. If you're interested in taking it, let us know. And, company questionnaire type thing.
Yep.
And I wanted to call you and talk about it because I am no expert in RNA, mRNA, these types of things. And so to find out more about how these things work, again, just allows you to make an informed decision that is best for you with your community in mind.
Right. One of the things that really prompted me, though, Bryan, I was telling you this before we got on. I mean, I've had a couple friends die from it, so that may have made me more prone to be like, absolutely, I would get that.
Well, it's interesting because we all have these unique experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we make these decisions. Like I was talking about, I know I've been in close contact with it, contact trace from work and that sort of thing, and tested weekly, always negative. So I have a little lighter of, and I'm young, so I have a little lighter of a feeling towards it. Whereas you have this experience and have
Yep.
dealt with those two people or understand that situation.
Yep.
So I think it's great for us to come together like in a form like this.
Yeah, but on the same hand, Bryan, I think for example, there is a limited amount of vaccine available, right?
I don't think it should
So
go to me.
exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
If I had to triage where the vaccine should go, I
Yeah,
would be like, you'd be last on the list, Bryan. I'm sorry, you
right.
should be last on the
Mhm.
list.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
if you were actually working on a COVID floor with COVID patients, then I'd change my tune on that. I mean, I know, me and you are both healthcare providers, but again, based on your age, your immune status, yada, 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 being tested every day, doing the proper hygiene, yeah, I would put you down the list. And I think for both of us, we're a little bit down the list. There's going to
Sure.
be millions of doses dispensed before it even, can come around to us, even though it's coming around to you sooner than me, based on where you work. But still, I think there's something to be said for foregoing the vaccine at this time, so that somebody that's at higher risk can get it.
Yeah, it's almost like we reverted back to March with the PPE when we were running out of PPE, and now we're triaging where everything kind of goes, and it's just the supply chain logistic of this health crisis
Right.
as well.
Yep.
But that was at least helpful in making more of an educated decision, being a lot more aware of how this thing works.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
Anything
we still have I have a lot of questions about it.
of course,
I know you do. And we'll find out. But as of right now, based on what I'm seeing, it seems like a very safe thing to get and to do.
awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's episode of the Well Man's Podcast. We'll be back with you next week. I know we took a little bit of a hiatus there, but we're glad to be back. And thank you for listening. Anything else, Keoni?
That's it. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Be well.
Bye.